As much as 97% of beef in the United States still originates from family farms and ranches. An important part of taking care of these families that provide so much of our food source is ensuring safety when handling and transporting cattle. In this video, safety for humans and animals comes from the basic framework of the Beef Quality Assurance, or BQA, certification program. Their core beliefs are: production practices affect consumer acceptance of beef. The BQA program has and must continue to empower beef producers to improve the safety and wholesomeness of beef. The BQA's mission is to guide producers toward continuous improvement using science-based production practices that ensure cattle well-being, beef quality, and safety. Because consumer behavior is driven by their perceptions of the origin of a product, BQA's drive to ensure safe and proper handling of cattle is critical to the success of the industry. Although only 27% of consumers self-identify as being familiar with cattle raising practices, 71% of people take into consideration how their food was raised during purchasing decisions. By offering education and transparency in these areas, producers can build consumer trust while promoting safe animal handling techniques through proper training. The use of best practices ensures a safe, healthy, and productive work environment. Cattle are prey animals, and to them, humans are perceived as predators. So, their instinctive behavior is to be aware of us and what we're doing at all times. They do this with the following senses. Sight. This is a primary method used by cattle. They want to see you. Sound. Any sound can be stressful to cattle. This is a secondary method, only when sight isn't enough to communicate. Touch. This is useful in certain situations when additional stimulus is needed. The first principle of cattle behavior is that cattle want to see you. When you move back and forth, you can see cattle focus on you. They want to see you. That's a predator-prey relationship. If you try to move behind the cattle, you can see how they react. They're going to try to watch you, keeping you in sight, which will help begin the process of directing and training them. Cattle have eyes on either side of their heads, giving them a field of vision in excess of 300 degrees and binocular vision between 25 and 50 degrees. This means that there are blind spots behind a cattle that need to be considered in safe handling techniques. The other interesting fact about the eyes: you'll notice that cattle like to see you mainly with their left eye, their dominant eye. This is a side associated with the part of the brain that processes their fight or flight response. Additionally, sound plays a large role in how cattle react. While cattle may not be able to determine the source of sound as accurately as humans, they're incredibly sensitive to high-pitched noises, and loud sounds may startle them. By taking these physiological factors into account and making yourself visible by speaking calmly, you can ensure that cattle see you coming and remain calm throughout the handling process. The second principle is that cattle want to go around you. Because cattle want to keep visual contact with you, and because of the way their eyes are positioned, they will move to keep you more clearly in their sight. The point of balance for cattle is at the shoulder. That's the point that helps determine where you stand to either encourage the cattle to stop or apply pressure and get them to move. Standing in front of the shoulder, at that point of balance, will stop them. Moving just behind the point of balance will get them to move forward. Cattle have a desire to maintain visual contact with their handlers. This instinct drives them to move around you so you can direct the cattle to their final destination. The third principle is that cattle want to be with other cattle. Prey animals with herding instinct always feel more comfortable with the herd. In most situations where an animal is separated, the lone cattle's instinct is to be with the others, so providing pressure that directs them to a pathway to rejoin the herd is most effective. The fourth principle is that cattle want a way to return to where they came from. When you give them the right pressure and provide the right opportunity, cattle would tend to return to the pens they're more accustomed to naturally. New and unfamiliar surroundings feel uncomfortable to them. Many cattle working facilities use this natural behavior to effectively move cattle through a chute or to a loadout. The fifth principle is that cattle can only process one main thought at a time. If cattle are thinking about anything other than what you're asking them to do, you'll have to change their focus before directing them further. Cattle have an instinctive need to return to where they've been before, so if you want them to keep moving forward or go in a new direction, it's best to make sure that their focus is always on the new task. Cattle that are used to being around humans will usually respond better when directed from the front, as it helps keep their focus on the intended direction of movement. Working with cattle in pens can sometimes be challenging, but if you draw them towards the gate or opening and then work from the side, you'll generally have more success. The proper use of pressure is important when handling cattle. When working with cattle, start from the front and apply pressure only when they have a clear route or destination. This will encourage movement forward and pressure can be released. Working from the front is best so cattle feel comfortable going by you without balking or spooking. If necessary, you may need to apply some pressure from behind using a zigzag pattern. Releasing the pressure as soon as the result is achieved is key. Side pressure, along with drawing from the front, helps avoid working in the animal's blind spot. Going with the flow is important when approaching the point of balance in the herd. As you near this point, cattle will slow down or stop their movement naturally. To initiate or accelerate movement of cattle, you must pass them from the front to the back, moving out of the point of balance. This technique is known as pushing against the flow and should be done carefully and cautiously to avoid spooking any members of the herd. This technique works best when cattle are inside a confined area, like a single file lead up to a chute. Moving in straight lines when working with cattle is best to prevent fight or flight responses. If humans make arc patterns when handling cattle, those actions become more reflective of predators. Instead, make a straight path toward cattle to apply pressure and move straight away to release the pressure in order to avoid triggering a fight or flight response while getting them to go where they need to go. To get cattle ready to work, start by introducing them slowly to the idea of being handled. Cattle work best when they are ready, but it's your job to get them there, meaning trained, conditioned, and prepared to work. Shouting, whistling, poking, and prodding are counterproductive distractions. This may pose a challenge at a feedlot where you don't have control over how cattle were handled prior to arrival. But at a dairy, you may be able to help condition heifers to the flow of the parlor by doing dry runs with them when you are able, as well as letting them learn from other dairy cows currently in the milking herd. Cattle that have been properly conditioned greatly improve worker safety along with animal welfare. You can't compensate for poor cattle handling with good facilities. Focus on effective cattle handling first. However, keep the following in mind. Bud boxes are usually cheaper to build, but take a higher level of skill to operate. Crowd pens or tub systems are generally more expensive, but easier to stay safe and stay in the right position. Tubs with solid sides work best, but shouldn't be used as holding pens. You never want to fill the tub more than half full or more than the amount that will fit into the single file lead up. Single file lead ups should be solid sided, and alleyways can be solid or open sided with a squeeze chute width not exceeding 28 inches. Improper use of working facilities and animal handling tools such as flags, prods, and hot shots can affect meat quality. Cattle are more sensitive to heat and can quickly become overheated if exposed over time to extreme temperatures. Avoid transporting and processing during the hottest part of the day. Temperatures, as well as humidity indexes, play a large role in the welfare of the animal during transportation. Handle cattle gently and patiently. Provide water and shade. For transport, plan stops as quickly as possible, and don't load too many cattle on the trailer than allowed. It is also important to consider cold temperatures, as cattle are especially susceptible to chill and hypothermia in temperatures 32 degrees Fahrenheit or below freezing. Wet cattle are more susceptible to cold stress. Why is cattle handling during transportation so important? Proper handling and transporting your cattle is essential for their safety, comfort, and welfare. If done incorrectly, it can cause stress, injury, or even death to the animals. Excessive handling can lead to distress in cattle when they are placed in unfamiliar environments or changing weather patterns. It's important that all handlers have a basic understanding of animal handling principles. Proper handling should be used when loading cattle. Knowing what conditions are safe for transport will also help ensure that cattle won't suffer from dehydration or overheating during long trips on hot days. Being aware of these details keeps the herd healthy and ensures proper animal welfare practices. Proper handling of cattle also plays a large part in meat quality outcomes, which include bruising, dark spots, abscesses, etc., that can be caused by mishandling before and during loading for transportation. When it comes to transporting cattle, risk management is key. You should always inspect your trailer before loading, ensure the cattle are not overcrowded, and prepare for extreme weather conditions. Before loading, it's good practice to stage and group cattle based on a few factors. Number of cattle that can safely fit in a compartment. Sex of cattle, bulls, steers, cows, or heifers. Age and size, calves versus adult animals. Horned or polled animals. Pregnant and non-pregnant dairy cattle. And the overall condition of the animal and their fitness for transport. When loading animals onto a trailer, it's essential to take into consideration the density of the load. Overcrowding can lead to unnecessary stress on your cattle and impede their comfort and safety. Too many cattle in a small area not only creates stress, but also makes it difficult for animals to move around or find comfortable standing positions. Following these guidelines, outlined by the Colorado Beef Quality Assurance Program, helps ensure that all safety requirements are met during transport while allowing your animals to travel comfortably and safely. When loading animals for transport, it's important to take into account the potential risks posed by extreme temperatures and other weather conditions. Animals should be loaded with enough space between them so they can move around as needed, but also not overcrowded so that air can circulate freely in order to keep them healthy and comfortable. In extreme temperatures, use extra caution when loading animals onto trailers. For animal welfare, check weather forecasts before departure and adjust shipping schedules accordingly if necessary. When handling compromised cattle, it's important to be cautious and handle them slowly and gently. Give them extra space and don't attempt to load them if they can't do so without assistance. Cattle that need additional support should always be loaded last and unloaded first. Be cautious. Compromised cattle are often stressed and may be more difficult to handle. Handle compromised animals slowly and more gently than normal. Compromised cattle should be given extra space to allow them to move around freely without fear of being crowded or harmed. Never attempt to load non-ambulatory cattle. Cattle that cannot move on their own are called downers, and they should be moved safely to an area for proper care with food and water. Thank you for participating in this online training. Content was compiled from 2 in-person training presentations and hands-on demonstrations. These safety trainings were provided by the Colorado Livestock Association and funded by a grant from High Plains Intermountain Center for Agricultural Health and Safety. Thank you to Libby Bigler, State Coordinator, Colorado Beef Quality Assurance and Colorado Beef Council, for animal handling and safety in transportation, best practices information, charts, and graphs. For more information and details on BQA certification, visit bqa.org and cobeef.com. Thank you to Dr. Dean Fish, manager of the Santa Fe Ranch Foundation in Nogales, Arizona, for the animal handling and transportation safety demonstrations. A big thank you to our hosts, Five Rivers Cattle Feeding LLC, Feld Posh Holsteins LLC, and Empire Dairy. This training is supported by a grant from the High Plains Intermountain Center for Agricultural Health and Safety. For more information, contact Colorado Livestock Association at 970-378-0500.